Mike Hammond, welcome to New Mexico in Focus.
Thank you, Laura. Very nice to see you.
So I'm just going to dive right in. Forecasts are showing that we may be looking at a third La Nina in a row. How worried should New Mexicans be about water right now?
Well, there are certain basins that are doing reasonably well near the normal snowpack environment up north. We've got the Chama Basin and the upper Colorado looking pretty good, and then as you get farther south, it starts to decline into the 80s, 70s, 60%, depending on how far south you go. But it is going to be another challenging year. There's no doubt about it. Even when we had reasonable, normal precipitation in previous years, for whatever reason, the runoff hasn't produced like it normally does. And that seems to be true also in the Colorado River Basin, where we benefit from the San Juan Chama project, and also the San Juan Basin itself has a lot of water users that rely on that supply on that side of the basin. So the Southwest is definitely shifting into more of a post-climate change sort of world from a water perspective.
Yeah, so looking at the Rio Grande specifically, El Vado is empty or empty-ish for construction reasons. We look at Elephant Butte is about 11% capacity right now. How much slack is there in the system?
When you refer to slack in terms of like meeting demands, there's likely to be some shortages. We've been experiencing shortages from in the Rio Grande project from Elephant Butte for some time, and we also had experienced some shortages from the Rio Grande Basin late in the summer last year. If it wasn't for the monsoons, farmers would have really suffered in the Middle Valley for sure. There's also been some shortages on the San Juan Chama project to the municipal and agricultural contractors from that project occurring on and off for the last 5 or 6 years. So we're certainly in a they're calling it a mega drought. It's kind of hard to define that term, but it's persistent for sure. And then if you have kind of average rising temperatures, what occurs in that situation is you have more depletions associated with a degree in average temperature rise requires more expiration by plants and the environment in general, and evaporation from lakes and streams. So you're having this situation where average temperatures climbing creates more depletions. Even if you had the same water supply, you're still seeing less availability.
So we've seen problems on the lower Rio Grande play out in a sort of battle between states and also the federal government that's now in U.S. Supreme Court litigation. Looking toward the middle Rio Grande, are we within our budget, within our water rights, or could we see something similar play out in the future in the middle Rio Grande?
Since the runoff of 2019, we've experienced an underdelivery to the Elephant Butte or Rio Grande project, as we call it. As a result of the index at Otoe gauge, we have to deliver a certain quantity of water. And the irony of a very high runoff is that means we have to deliver a very high amount. And that year, we underdelivered for the first time. Well, on average, consistently underdelivered since 2019. So we find ourselves in a compact debit of about 120 some odd thousand acre feet, which we're taking steps to address with a fallowing program. The legislature agreed to a drought mitigation fund that will allow us to try to catch back up and make our deliveries to Elephant Butte in order to not get into a compact violation situation at 200,000 acre feet. So that's a top priority for me and the state this year, is to try to make some progress in making not only this year's delivery, but also chip away at that debit. And meanwhile, El Vado's being reconstructed, as you mentioned. So we're very hopeful that we chip away at that debit and then get El Vado back in place. for full use, and then we'll be somewhere near where we could operate in a normal cycle, I think.
New Mexico is wrangling right now with what to do with about $4 billion in federal infrastructure money. And we had infrastructure advisor Martin Chavez on the show recently talking about some of the priorities. I'm curious, what specific projects will your office be pushing for or advocating for or launching when it comes specifically to water?
Well, there's a strong understanding that rural New Mexico has been left behind on a lot of their infrastructure needs. We're not specifically involved in community water infrastructure and wastewater. That's more of a New Mexico Environment Department group under their Construction Bureau and their state revolving fund. But there is a tremendous need for all the agencies with the State Engineer's Office, NMED, also the New Mexico Finance Authority and the Water Trust Board process to really review what we've done in the past to make sure that we prioritize allowing for those rural communities that don't have the capacity to apply for grants, to implement them, to even manage the construction. We want to figure out a way to take full advantage of this funding, both at the state and federal levels, in order for rural New Mexico to catch up and get their systems in order. And on our end, we're going to be responsible for making sure they have adequate water rights and all of that stuff for their 40-year water outlook, like all other communities that have capacity are able to do. So we want to reverse that trend.
So nationwide, when people talk about infrastructure and water, dams often come up as, there's unsafe dams nationwide. Is that really a problem here in New Mexico?
It certainly is, yeah. We have lots of public and private dams that are aged out, so to speak. Some of them are full of sediment. They have undersized spillways. We've identified those in our dam safety office, which we're regulators on dam safety aspects, and we have notified dam owners of the deficiencies that need to be corrected. But there are funds available, and we're hoping to figure out a way that a regulatory agency can help move some of these communities towards fixing their problems.
So one of the, kind of jumping back to the session, one of the things that came up during the session this year were conversations around whether the state's top water boss, whether that should have a requirement that you're a registered professional engineer.
Right. Yeah.
And I was wondering, can you explain why the state's top water official should be a registered professional engineer versus a hydrologist or an attorney?
Certainly. Well, as the history has evolved, the original territorial engineer was established pre-1907 that kind of set the priority administration rules up in this state, for good or for bad. It's you could argue that in many different directions, but that's the process that the state chose to move forward on, and they established an extensive suite of regulations and statutes, some 50 of them that I know of. Actually cite the authority of the state engineer to carry out the laws and the administration of water in New Mexico. So there could be some to do it in a quick and I would call it unstudied manner. Would not be appropriate, because there would be a lot of possible unintended consequences. I'm not necessarily saying it shouldn't be done, but we're trying to set up a process where it could be evaluated in an open forum with people from around the state, where the governor's going to be issuing an executive order to establish a water policy and infrastructure task force that should be announced soon. And in that vein, we'll have a group of folks that will evaluate those types of policies and make recommendations to the interim committee process and to the governor's office, and also include recommendations in the 50-year water plan that is due to be released in July. So we have a lot of work ahead of us here in the next several months, but we certainly see that as an avenue to address the organization of the State Engineer's Office, and whether some other model like what's done in other states might fit the bill better. But we do need to plan for the 21st century needs because we have 20th century sort of infrastructure and policies and laws that are guiding us into the future, and it's time to look at that.
So over the years, you and I have had a lot of conversations. You were with the Bureau of Reclamation for many years, and then the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. And I recall, like, through my reporting, you were one of the first really sort of top water officials in New Mexico to talk openly and forthrightly about climate change. And I'm curious, you know, through the course of your career in these various water management capacities, you know, what are the biggest changes that you've seen and had to grapple with as a water manager?
I think the realization, of course, of the changing water supply situation has been known to folks that pay attention to it on a routine basis. I think the public is really, you know, just now really fully understanding what we're up against, and that's been a challenge to really get folks to understand that, yes, there are hydrologic realities and there's things that we need to keep in mind as we plan various projects and various responses to Endangered Species Act and various things like that to try to keep things in balance. But to me, I think the biggest challenge has been the fact that there's a whole new suite of demands on the system. They've always been there in terms of the environment, the watershed health, and the maintenance of the flora and fauna, with just the riparian environment and all the necessary things to have a healthy ecosystem. But it's maintaining that balance in a declining, you know, water supply situation, while keeping the traditions and the cultures of New Mexico that is just so special compared to anywhere else in the country intact because of the way we've evolved as communities, with the Acequia communities and our tribal and Pueblo cultures kind of commingling over the centuries into what we have today, which is a very modern, robust kind of socioeconomic structure that still needs to be supported with the basics like water and food security and shelter. Everybody needs that, right? So that balance with the growing demands and meeting federal laws under Endangered Species Act and making sure that we stay out of court. You know, you spend a lot of money on litigation when you could be using it for good projects and things to help advance our water supply needs is the main challenge right now, for sure.
So kind of final words, when it comes to water, what mistakes can we just not afford to make right now? Underestimating the potential for serious drought. We need to plan for that, and we need to be out ahead of it as much as we possibly can. We need to review our policies and our infrastructure procedures and operating plans to make sure that we have enough flexibility in the system to adapt quickly. Because I just got off a call on Colorado River operations. What if Lake Powell drops below the power pool? That could have a tremendous impact on the renewable energy that we're using in the Southwest, while we're simultaneously decommissioning coal-fired power plants, right? So, there could be some real serious problems if we don't plan accordingly, and that's one of the top jobs that the Interstate Stream Commission and our office is looking to implement. Well, Mike Hammond, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Laura. Always a pleasure.
Thanks.